Let's bring in the Daily Telegraph columnist Tim Blair and Mark Nicholson from Stepmate Studios. Great to catch up with you guys. It's been a particularly insane week, so I'm hoping you can re-establish some form of order. I thought it was lovely to see Albo's social media there today. Mark showing us some of the loveliest spots in the country, you know, down at the beach at Newcastle and Anglesea and the Barossa Valley. And this is where he reckons they're going to stick nuclear power plants.
Yeah, I know. And people call what I do as propaganda. I've never seen more propaganda on a bloke's social media than this. It's absolutely ridiculous. He's saying, why would you want to live like near a nuclear reactor? I wouldn't want to live near a nuclear reactor for sure, but you know, wind turbines are blowing up as well. And I think my favourite criticism of his post was that it's taken 630 days for Peter Dutton to come up with his plan. Now he's criticising it for being thought carefully. That's a ridiculous criticism. It makes no sense.
Yeah, some of the responses online, though, really slaughtered Albo. They showed people happily living next door to nuclear reactors in Europe, but also, 7 wind turbines in your backyard. How consider someone wants him to do that? And look at this one, Tim. How did you like to have that in your backyard? Or perhaps a solar farm? Wouldn't it be lovely living next to the solar farm, Tim?
Yeah, and you know, if you're living next door to a great big wind turbine, all the endangered birds and wildlife smashing into your windows every day. I say,
there's another wedge-tailed eagle.
Yeah,
another wedge-tailed eagle in the backyard for the puppy to mop up.
I actually would like to live next door to a nuclear reactor. I've got a few picked out. There's some nice little villages in France, as you mentioned, in Europe. You know, anyone who wants to shut me up in Australia, just send me the fares. I'll go over there and live for a whole year and come back mutated, no arms, you know. I'll prove how dangerous it is. I'll take those risks.
I remember years ago as a young lefty journo doing a tour of Roxby Downs, and the bloke giving us a tour from Western Mining was talking about how they're making it a sanctuary around the mine and they're going to try and maintain all the species. And I said, I bet you end up with more species. The three-legged kangaroo, and it never happened, of course. It never happened. Now, speaking of wild alarmism, the United Nations never lets us down. Every now and then when they think people are getting along too well, they have a big event and talk climate fear and alarmism. And Antonio Guterres, the former Socialist Party Prime Minister of Portugal, gets into it. Here he is yesterday.
Many governments restrict or prohibit advertising for products that harm human health, like tobacco. Some are now doing the same with fossil fuels. I urge every country to ban advertising from fossil fuel companies. And I urge news media and tech companies to stop taking fossil fuel advertising.
Good Lord, he wants to ban the advertising of fossil fuels now.
Mate, if we were into banning bad things, wouldn't the UN be at the top of that list?
Yes, exactly.
When have they won? When have they succeeded? When have they actually introduced material benefit to anybody? I mean, right down at the on the ground level, and with the various, you know, the blue helmets in countries that they're attempting to aid. Look at all the rape convictions. Look at just how atrocious these people behave in just one-on-one situations in troubled countries, and then escalate that to how they behaved throughout the pandemic, throughout the COVID pandemic. The UN should be rubbed out.
Perhaps that would be the deal, Mark. We could suggest to the UN, when you deliver peace in the Middle East, then we'll stop advertising the produce from the Middle East, all that oil.
Not bad. Yeah, and maybe when he starts walking to work, this bloke, like, does he walk? He catches planes everywhere. This bloke, he's part of the problem as well. He's rubbers on the road on the highway to hell or whatever he called it. It's and they're trying to ban all these creative agencies for working for. Yeah, the climate hell. And they're trying to ban all these creative agencies. They keep coming up with new slogans for all this climate alarmism. I think they've got a fantastic creative agency working for them. You know, it was acid rain, the hole in the ozone layer, global boiling, oceans. It's so clever. Maybe they just want dominance in this advertising space. I have no idea what's going on.
I reckon I blame Mad Max for the highway to climate hell. It's got to be Miller's fault. That one.
Close, yeah.
It's just laughable. Let's go in our search for sanity around the world. Why don't we go to US politics? Donald Trump now suggesting that if he becomes president, where they're trying to convict him if he becomes president, in true Banana Republic style, he might try and prosecute whoever's his predecessors. Have a look.
It's a terrible, terrible path that they're leading us to, and it's very possible that it's going to have to happen to them. Does that mean the next president does it to them? That's really the question.
Yeah, well, Tim, they're turning America now into Nicaragua or Panama.
Well, this is the sort of thing that perhaps some strategists on the Biden side didn't think about. What if we do something and then the same thing happens to us? Generally, you want to think about that before a lot of situations. What happens if I go up to that big guy at the bar and say he looks like a Nancy? What's going to happen to me? You want to always go that next step forward, and see what happens. And if Trump starts lashing out at these people, if he is elected, well, fair play,
Well, and if Joe Biden wants to know how it feels, he could always just ask his son at the moment, who seems to be having a bit of a strife. Let's have a look at Joe Biden. The fascinating report here that I want to go to was in the Wall Street Journal, and it's quoting insiders being worried about President Joe Biden's capabilities behind closed doors. It says when President Biden met with congressional leaders in the West Wing in January to negotiate Ukraine funding deals, he spoke so softly at times that some participants struggled to hear him. According to 5 people who were familiar with the meeting, they paused for extended periods, and sometimes he closed his eyes for so long that some in the room wonder whether he'd tuned out. I think they're probably racing over to check for a pulse. And before I get your thoughts on this, let's just have a look. This is the latest. This is in the last 24 hours. Joe Biden, again, just seemingly all at sea.
To know, and, I think the thing about, let me put it this way. I remember when I was vice president.
Yeah, what do you think of that, Tim?
I think it's a lie. I don't think he does remember when he was vice president. I don't think he remembers a lot of things. The thing that's interesting about this piece in the Wall Street Journal is it says that people are concerned about Biden, behind closed doors. Well, it's not as though we need to be reminded about what he's about behind closed doors. We're seeing him right out in front of those doors, making a clown of himself every week. I mean, if you look back even a couple of years at Biden's speeches, the decline is really, really kicking in. And I can't really see. I mean, you keep talking about it, Chris, about him not making it all the way to the election. That's becoming a very real thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I think, Mark, if you ever use him in Please Explain cartoons, it'll be very easy to voice because you'll just have a long pause while he's looking around, working out what to say. We're just all out of time, guys. Thanks so much for joining us again. Catch you next week.